Hi, everybody. This is Team Amazing. My name is Dorothy Hemo. I'm an instructional services librarian here at the University of Illinois at Springfield.
I am Susan Pennington. I am a teacher librarian at Springfield Southeast High School, about a mile up the road. Go Spartans is right. Which side? East side.
Hello, my name is Ben Nanamaker. I am a librarian at Lincoln Library here in Springfield, and that is the public library.
And I'm John Laubersheimer, rounding out the team. I'm also an instructional services librarian here at UIS.
So our team is made up of all different types of librarians, or librarians from different types of libraries, and this was specifically so that we could better address our identified community need. We all work with high school to college freshman age students. Some of us work with other constituencies as well, but we all work with that age group. And we've noticed a skills gap when it comes to information literacy, specifically for those students who are transitioning from high school into college. So that's what we decided to do our project on. We have created a website that is a series of tutorials and games and assessments to help students learn information literacy concepts, such as academic integrity, for example, and information literacy skills, like creating a citation, for example. Now, we wanted it to be an engaging experience for the students, so we've added gaming elements, and also we're using digital badges in our website. I just want to make one comment about the content of the website, the games and the tutorials. They're almost exclusively pre-existing learning objects that are available under Creative Commons licenses, and we found those through repositories online such as Primo, which is the peer-reviewed instructional materials online, and there are a few other places that we found those. Now, Susan's going to talk a little bit more about that community need.
As a 14-year veteran of the high school English classroom turned librarian, I was all too familiar with the disengagement when you tell a student that they need to do research or find information. As a teacher, you start talking about it, and the kids hear want, 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 want. And then as the kids start to ask questions and complain about it, the teachers hear want, 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 want. So I became increasingly familiar with the need to address this. English teachers in the classroom today are so overloaded. Class sizes are 30 plus. They're teaching 5 and 6 classes. They've got to integrate the Common Core. They're working on gradual release. They've got high stakes testing to prepare for. There is nowhere in the curriculum to stick this in the classroom. Okay, so just let a highly qualified, licensed school librarian teach this to the kids. Well, that's great. When do the teachers have time to give me their classes and not lose instructional time? So this was kind of the precipice to us saying, we've got to come up with a way to get the information to the kids in a platform that's fun, in a way that would engage them, that could be done as a flipped classroom, as extra credit, or as a classroom assignment, that they just complete on their own, but then come back in and they can discuss it in the classroom. And so that was kind of where this is coming from.
And so the next piece in the conundrum that we're trying to address is that then these high school kids, at least the college-bound ones, come to Dorothy and I at University of Illinois Springfield with, pretty much at square zero in many cases, but being expected to perform to even higher academic standards. And then, we have our own limits on what kind of library instruction we get to use. I mean, for all the current rejection of the idea of the one-shot instruction, it's not a term we call that, I don't think, endearingly. It's more of a realization that we only will get maybe 90 minutes or something like that. And unfortunately, that time is very frequently, I don't want to say wasted, because that's certainly not at all the interpretation I want to say, but it's spent on skills they should have in many cases. And that's just not necessarily a good use of our time, because, again, the academic standards they're being expected to perform to are much, much higher and keep getting higher as they go on. And so we run into the situation where we're teaching them basic skills like how to do search strings rather than how to find very specific subject information with a whole language they might not necessarily be familiar with, because they're all of a sudden be reading things almost exclusively written by PhD holders. And so, like I said, that ends up eating our valuable time. And let's see, like I said, that was a really bad note. That's the worst handwriting. And what this initially funnels into is that then we are forced in the college level to rely on other means of educating these students, and many of them are just very inefficient, even if they are highly impactful. Things like the research consultation is one of the reasons I love getting out of bed in the morning and going to work, is if I have one of those scheduled. It's fantastic to learn about somebody's interest and then to help them get to where they want to be on that interest, but it's an hour of my time for one person. And I can't hit a student body of 4,000 on-ground students. I don't have 4,000 hours.
So how public libraries sort of link into this is that we also do a lot of instruction sessions. And a lot of times what it ends up being is a school will bring in its kids, and they'll have a project, a history science fair, or just a regular research paper. And we end up doing a lot of the same things they do. It's crash courses in how to search our catalog, how to search our databases. But what we need to be doing, really, and what we should be doing, is teaching them the general skills to search a catalog or to search a database. And we don't have, that sort of tool right now, until we started working on this project. But the other thing that kind of is important about public libraries in this is that we serve both populations. We serve college students who will come in all the time and ask for books for their papers, as well as those classes that come in to meet with us to do consults for an hour and a half or 2 hours, or just the students who come in looking for research project stuff on their own time. So the next step is to kind of go over the idea of gamification, which was sort of like our, the seed and kernel of what we're doing. And we've talked about that so much today between the man from Douglas County Libraries, the director there, and other projects we've seen today have worked with gamification a lot. So we initially came at it from the idea of Xbox Live achievements. That's where our kind of hook was. We thought of it in terms of, well, when people play these games, they're playing the games for fun, but then there's this entire other layer of game on top of it. And that's not to say that the instruction sessions are fun, but our hope is to go from sort of the standard operating procedure of an instruction session, which, I think we've all done, which is us standing on the stage and shooting information at people for, an hour or 90 minutes, to having something a little bit fun to go into it, either to do it on their own time, or, to have them set up and do it ahead of time and then come into classroom and do it. But just to make it more fun than us talking and, throwing the database up on the screen and showing them how to search for an hour and a half. So what we did was create a system, like a hierarchical system of awards to go with, our site. And basically what it amounts to is you have these tasks that you'll do, and the task can be something along the lines of watch this video, answer a question about the video. So it can be like a video on the differences between Dewey Decimal and Library of Congress call numbers. There's also games that we do that we make. What we do is we have them play the game, and then they screen grab their score from the game and submit that. One of the things we're working on, and John will talk about that later, is setting up quiz functionality where they will go through a website that has information on citations, and then they will have like a 3-question quiz. They'll click the radial buttons to answer the quiz. We'll get the score for it, and then, what happens when they complete a task is they'll get what's, a first level badge. And some of the first level, these are the badges that are up there are badges that they'll get for completing multiple tasks. So like the where it's at badge is what you'll get if you complete everything on using the catalog and Library of Congress call numbers and the difference between Library of Congress call numbers and Dewey call numbers. Each of those badges basically corresponds to a core skill. So you'll get a badge, and then you'll go up to what's called a rank. And then from there, like once you get there's like 4 ranks that correspond to the 4 main areas that we're trying to cover. And then you're completed. Did I get the hierarchy right, John?
More or less.
More or less? All right. So now John's going to talk about the technology that goes into setting this site up.
And that's really one of the bigger pieces of this is that doing gamification is a very involved process, as the Midwest Athenians also found out. It's Ben, slide. Yes. There we go. It's a big thing. It's a very big thing. But luckily, it's gamification as an educational tool has kind of moved past that kernel of an idea phase that only very few technical people can do, and ready-to-use products are starting to show up, in many cases for free. The 2 we really looked at were the Purdue Passport, which is they kind of provide hosting for it as well. The problem with that was it was actually in beta testing, and we didn't have a guarantee of future access. What we ended up going with was a WordPress plugin called Badge OS, run out of the Badge Stack people, and they're closely related to Credly. The big advantages there is that Badge OS sits on top of a WordPress install, which brings along with it a lot of customability, and just a huge pool of code you can grab from other people. So it really cuts down on some of the need to be able to run a server like the suggestion that Eli Nyberger made when he did his keynote last session. Because that's an amazing system, but it's much more technically oriented than ours. The second advantage is that Badge OS is a Credly product, and Credly is kind of an online certification micro-credentialing kind of a thing. So these awards and things that they earn in the process of completing their Team Amazing experience can be displayed publicly. They don't cease to exist once they leave our site. And that's, I think, really where the future of gamification is going, is more the credentialing rather than all this business about it actually being a game. That kind of fits into some other things we've heard too. Another advantage of this whole WordPress thing is that, like I mentioned, the plugins and things like that, go ahead and advance, is that we were able to get LearnDash, which is kind of a really easy to use but very hardcore educating plugin for WordPress that Badge OS also integrates with. And that allows us to take some of the workload off of actually approving the submissions and things like that by implementing quizzing and automatic kind of exceptions and things like that. Because that's also one of the flaws of a gamification system, is that there has to be some kind of oversight. And they're never going to be able to completely eliminate that, but if we're trying to get this game into a classroom, and Susan gave us a pretty grim picture of what it's like to be a high school media librarian. You really can't have it be the kind of thing where somebody needs to be grading homework again. And so we're still honestly working on the quizzing. This is actually my next major point, is that a lot of open source tools exist out there for a lot of things, and it's very wonderful and fantastic, but the thing a lot of people, they hear open source, they think free, we can do it, but you're making a very, very big trade-off when you do open source things. You're trading cash money up front that you need to have in hand for a whole boatload of manpower. It's not, to do this, it's fairly easy given enough time, but in the 9 months we had with all the grant troubles we had, we really didn't have enough time necessarily to get this to where we wanted to be for today. It's just, there was HTML coding, all kinds of things like that. And then even on top of the getting WordPress to work the way you want it, you still have to come up with that hierarchy we talked about. The gamification is not just something you point at something and it magically happens. It is just regular video gaming is a multi-billion-dollar industry. It is innovations pouring out of that every game. We're not making 3D graphic awesome shooter thing over here, but we're still having to organize and prepare an experience for the user. It can't be this slapdash thing if we want engagement. And that's kind of where we landed. I think that's all I got right now. On to the future. Who is that?
That would be me.
All right. Talk about the future of info skills to go. And this is actually a screen grab of what the site looks like currently.
We'll show you the site in a minute. So, future plans. We have a lot of, not a lot, we have some polishing to do of the website. I won't go into specifics. It's functional, so once we give you the URL, you're welcome to go and look at it. I don't think it's ready to be tested in the classroom just yet, but very soon, I think. Some things we want to add. We want to do more gaming elements. We're working on having a leaderboard. We want to add hidden achievements. There are, in fact, some hidden achievements right now, which you could find. But we want to add more of that kind of gaming element. We definitely want to add more badges. Right now we have the 4 badges that equal the core badge, the core skills badge. And it would be fairly easy to expand on the concepts and skills that we're covering. You just create tasks, add a new badge. It's very flexible in that way. Ideally, what we would like to do is create a unique instance of the website for each class that would use it. That way, an instructor would have, that way an instructor would be able to monitor and approve submissions from their own students and only their students. We still have yet to figure out if that's going to be a viable plan. We've already talked quite a bit, actually, about how to integrate this website into the curriculum. And actually, my colleagues have already pretty much covered it. You could do a flipped classroom model. You could do in-class activities. You could do straight-up homework, extra credit, that sort of thing. We have discussed a little bit about assessment of the site. And we need to ask ourselves, once we get this into the hands of students, have we achieved our goals, and how do we measure that? I would like to see us have students do a pre and post test with the TRAILS information literacy skills test to measure whether or not there's any kind of difference in the pre-test and the post-test. And we'd like to see a feedback survey where we get information from both the instructors and the students about whether or not they felt it was an engaging experience. Was it fun? Did it keep them motivated to do the various tasks? I had the opportunity to introduce a freshman seminar class here at UIS to an early version of the academic integrity badge. It was exclusively on plagiarism. The students were not required to participate, but their teacher did give them extra credit if they did. And half of the class did all 3 tasks. There were 3 tasks, and they earned 1 badge. Half of the class did all 3 tasks and earned the badge. And I'm going to have the opportunity next week. I'm going to see them for an instruction session, and I'll be able to get some feedback about how they felt about the experience and the whole concept of digital badges. When I went in to introduce the badge to them at the beginning of the semester, none of them had heard of digital badges, which surprised me. Anyway, so I'll get some information from real-life students about that, and that may inform the way we move forward. I think we're ready for questions. There's the URL, infoskills2go.com, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you have for us now. Thank you. Sina.
I remember and from the library, and she gave a talk. It was about an hour telling us about all the resources that you just talked about, querying, et cetera, et cetera. And it was exceptionally boring. And the reason was that it was not useful to anybody at the time, even though all the information she was giving was going to be an absolute lifesaver over the next couple of semesters and as you're doing research and have that problem. So it's neat that if this kind of information can be, if those two things can be brought closer together when you need the info and then it's available to you, I like that aspect of it, and I think there's some potential here to do exactly that. So that's my observation. As far as the question goes, I'd like to know if you've considered using these badges to actually not only have a gamification effect, but a real-world effect to incentivize people to get them and also to talk about them. For example, if you have all 4 badges that are available, maybe you get an extra week to check out a book, or you get an extra book to check out whatever the real-world benefits may be. It would be neat. And lastly, it would be just cool to me from a meta point of view to have the badges actually be linked to your badge, to your student ID, if that's anything that you guys do during the checkout process. And so that way it could be rather automated.
I like that idea of the real world thing. No, we're not even past the point of here's the website. I mean, I want to work with high school librarians and with the instructors in the high schools and, see what we can do there. At UIS, we do have a baccalaureate goal that is specific to information literacy. So it's written in, the baccalaureate goals for underclassmen, for undergraduates. Right now, I wouldn't say that they are at all. Definitely. Right, that's the idea of the badges, is to have them connected to evidence of your achievement. And I think that would be a good goal, especially at the college level, like you say.
And that's, if I may interject, that's also the importance of that Credly thing, is that it will be persistent outside of our system. Because whether or not we can actually plug things into a student ID formally are sometimes maybe not possible due to various, maybe even like security issues, or FERPA for that matter could be a thing for us depending. But the Credly thing exists as kind of this, there's a thing called the Mozilla Open Backpack, which...
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
We have a question back, way in the back.
So is this the site that you built with WordPress and the plugins you mentioned?
Yeah.
Yes.
So can we make an account and try it out?
Yeah, he wanted to know if you could make an account and try it out. That's exactly what this is for. When we actually start rolling out for individual installs and things, or not installs, I want to say individual instances, it'll be, there's always going to be tweaking and things like that. If you are interested in trying this out, shoot us an email at that contact info, and we will hit you with the registration code. I think you next. He asked if we made the theme. That was actually one of the places we spent money on, is we spent money on the theme. Yeah, it's actually from a European graphic design shop that sells like themes. It's called UTheme. It presented us with some unfortunate licensing. Like, we can't give the site's code out because there's some various things licensed on here, like LearnDash and our theme as well. But we really wanted to make this graphically appealing, and there's the logo we actually made.
John made it.
That was actually one of the...
John did that. Yay.
And I just want to interject something really quickly. One thing that we are still in the process of doing to get buy-in from administration and teachers and so forth is connecting individual Common Core standards to each of these badges so that to get that buy-in, I mean, CCS is everything right now, and it's not just Illinois, it is everywhere. And so when they could pull up and right here, it's got, we could list Common Core standards and list them out individually. You've got such buy-in from your administration and your teachers. So,
I believe she's had her hand up way longer.
I was just wondering if you had thought about including digital and media literacy later on after you've covered information literacy.
well, we've got the domain. We got the domain for 3 years. So
She asked if we were going to include media literacy, BTW.
We hadn't considered it, but adding a badge would be a fairly simple
Well,
thing.
and one of the things we hope is that if people start taking this up, they will start wanting to generate content for it, because we're not making any money off this. We're not charging them. It's pretty, please use it, we'll help you. The only thing is we're trying to be a little more in charge of the hosting issue, just so it's one less thing to worry about. All right. Yeah.
Since you have the domain name for 3 years, is your intent to continue to work, you said this is next and this is next, is your intent to continue as a team to work to develop those things?
So she asked if our intent was to develop these things, and absolutely.
Yes. Yes, we're sticking together for the long term.
we're all here in Springfield, so it makes it very easy to do that.
Also, Susan knows my mom, so.
She's one of the other high school librarians in our district, so I can keep tabs.
I've actually started.
Beck's got a question.
Yeah.
Yes, so in the completion of the tasks that get into the badge, is there a way for the students to talk to each other through voice chat?
That was something we just didn't have time to look at. Beck wanted to know if there was a way the students could talk to each other. That's certainly very doable. Buddy Press actually integrates with the Badge OS thing too. We just flat ran out of time to learn another system and install it, but that's something we could certainly include.
Sorry. This one has
You need to turn that off. No, that's absolutely something that also crossed our mind. Like I said, we just flat ran out of time. Like, it took us months to get the grant squared away, and we're still waiting for our leaderboard job out thing to get a contract signed. One last question. Doesn't necessarily have to be related.
I was going to say, if we don't have the last question, not only did John design the logo, he designed all the badges. One of the things we ran into is we were hoping to spend some of our money on a graphic designer, but as it turns out, there were issues. Yeah, there were issues with using the grant funding to pay somebody, especially somebody that we knew from UIS, to do the graphics. Yes.
That's actually one of those things where I had a large advantage working. She asked what programs we use to make the badges. I kind of used a weird hybrid approach. There's the cheapest free option. If you go to the Credly site, they have a badge creator. It doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles, though. Like all those fancy backgrounds and weirdnesses are things I made. And I actually did that in Photoshop because I have access to it through the university. But there are perfectly acceptable free things out there. And so I ended up using a little bit of both. All right, there will be no encore.
Mic drop.
And one other thing,
I said there was no encore.
I know, but I just had to say, as this day is coming to a close, I mentioned to Dorothy, I'm like, do you realize we are the only team whose team name has 0 to do with our project? Nothing. Unless, of course, you think this is amazing, in which case it works.
I think we've caught our limit on compliments, Susan.